Okay, I will call this meeting to order of the Leominster Conservation Commission for December 11th, 2018. It is now 6:12 p.m. And first item of business is enforcement. We have DEP file number 199-1066, Royal Oaks, Lot 12-2, 3 Royal Oaks Way. We've got some silt breaches on either side of the driveway, a large breach where the footing drain of the home is as well. Is anyone here to speak on behalf of that project this evening?
Mary Ann DePinto, 3 Oaks Environmental.
Brian Campanelli, I'm the builder, yeah, 3 builders.
Do you want to give us a quick update first, Angela? Or?
Sure. So I went out to the site this morning just to inspect. I did receive an update and erosion report from Mary Ann. I did forward to everyone. They did put crushed stone down the driveway to take care of the muddy, wet situation there. But I did notice that towards the end of the driveway, there was some woodstock piles in an area that had previously been breached. It looks like there was some stone around it to stabilize the area, but where the silt fencing was falling in due to the woodstock piles, the trash can and whatnot was kind of falling into that area as well. I did pull the trash can out and put it back. I have some pictures here. You can kind of see the hay bales and there's a silt breach in here. And that's all near wetland flag B38. Everything is pretty much frozen on the site, so it's stable for now. The only spot that isn't fully frozen is where the footing drain is. There is still some water going in that way. And I did a rough measurement with my arms on either side of the area where the water is. It's about 5 to 7 feet from 2 different wetland flags. A13 was the one I could read. That one didn't have any label on it. Another area where there was at one point a large pile of hardened concrete, which has been removed. The erosion controls there are all kind of falling over into the wetlands. The silt fencing is down. They did add some more of the stone in that area to stabilize it. It doesn't seem like there's any more of a silt breach in there. Then the footing drain, when I got on site today, they had wood area blocking the footing drain. I had to climb over and through the wetlands to get to it to take a look. When they put crushed stone around the outside of it, but where the break in the rock wall and the silt fencing was still there, and there was still some water flowing out into the bordering area of the wetland, and it's getting into the wetland now at this point. And it's not as turbid. The weather we have had has been very difficult, to say the least, but there's some silt that has gotten fully down to the wetland. And then towards the back of the property, there's a large area. There's a break in the erosion controls, and then there's a large unstable area that will probably if it isn't stabilized soon, it will wash out, which was noted by Mary Ann in her erosion control report. And then towards the back of the property, I was walking by wetland flags B. There was some tree cutting inside the wetland in between 2 different wetland flags. I think it was B3. Yep, I'm sorry, B8 was the wetland flag. There was a large tree that was a fresh cut. There was a pile of wood chips that were not frozen. They were on top of frozen ground, so they were fresh from 2 different areas where they were cutting within the wetland.
Can you just stop at that? I just want to see that picture that you said they were cutting in the wetland. Is that anywhere near the building at all, or?
No, it's on the other side of the erosion controls.
Okay.
I did find out that the disturbed area that I pointed out was a debris pile. It was an old concrete pile that they removed, and so the ground is disturbed. They're going to wood chip it and then loam and seed it. It will be loamed and seeded.
And then there's just a couple other areas on the other side of the driveway from where the trash barrel is being kept that just need attention. The erosion controls are missing. Some of the hay bales are completely missing. And they did put They did put stone there, which is helping, but in the spring, they're gonna wanna have their full erosion controls in effect to prevent any sort of washout. I sure would like to see these.
Do you want to give us a presentation, Marianne? Or?
Sure, I did not see the site since the initial contact. I went out, noted that there had been some evidence of turbidity that had made it through erosion controls and left a fine sediment on top of the leaves. My initial sense is that there's so little of it that the leaves will decompose and take the sediment, the fine sediments, and incorporate it into the existing wetland soils. If there are areas where it's deeper than that, just a dusting, then those areas could be removed and restored in the springtime. In the meantime, they need to take all of the soil that's currently disturbed. And you can see where the trucks have been through it and it's frozen into deep ruts and so on. Those areas need to be, well, the driveway, I asked that the driveway be covered with stone, and it has been done. And that the rest of the site have either wood chips or straw or stump grindings or something like that put on the soil, the disturbed soil, so that the rainfall, come spring, especially come spring, or any freeze-thaw cycle, doesn't start the stuff in motion again. And getting through, the fines will get through hay bales and silk fence and wattles. It's so fine that it passes through. One of the things, if that continues despite all the erosion control measures that you're taking, you can also use something called flocculant. And what you would do then is you would put jute netting in front of the erosion controls in the key spots where it might get through, and place this crystal flocculant. And what it does is makes this fine sediment sticky, and they'll stick to the erosion controls. As long as it goes through some sort of organic material like hay, straw wattles, it'll stick to it, and it won't get into the wetland. You can pick up a bucket. There's a couple of erosion control specialists out there that you can get a 5-gallon pail of it, and you just sprinkle the crystals on some jute netting right in front of the erosion controls.
Okay.
I suspect, based on that soil, there's a lot of fines, and until that is loamed and seeded, and it's going to continue to produce fines when it rains. Something else that could be done, I don't know, you don't have a lot of room out there, is to dig a sump in front of a couple of key spots, so that when the water runs off, it fills the sump up. That's another possibility.
It's been a very tough site. It's a low-lying site, and it sheds a lot of water, and we just have struggled with all these rainstorms.
Interesting. Yeah, it's been tough. It's rough with the rain. I know I had discussed with Mr. Cove about all, the trucks hitting the hay bales and knocking into the wetlands. It seems like it's a reoccurring issue, and we had discussed putting up construction fencing.
Yeah, the bright orange stuff.
Yeah, the bright
that's
orange stuff, kind of maybe along the line to kind of stop them from. That seems to do with the big issues. You can see big truck runs right in front of the hay
We
bales.
had 2 truckloads of lumber dropped off yesterday, and that's the problem. It's the tough driveway for those guys to back down, and they end up on the hay bale and over. So that's a majority of the lumber. So if we have neaten those up and put some construction netting in front of that before the ground gets too much harder, we can do that.
So it might help you guys for you guys having to keep.
And it might help with the snow drifts coming through that swamp area too.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to do is I'd like to be able to see it in a rainstorm and see where the problem points are and attack those.
Yeah, I think
I mean, even after all this dry, it's still muddy. The guys get the lull, and when they're trying to drive up the hill, and it's 2-foot rot, so we went there and we filled it with sand, hoping it would freeze, but you're talking weeks and weeks of rain up there, just turned that place into a big giant mud pit.
Any questions, thoughts?
The trees that are cut at wetlands marker B8, Is that 3 different trees, or are we looking at 2 pictures of the same tree?
There's one tree that's a large single tree, and the other tree looks like 2 trees that are coming out of the same stump.
Right. So-
And they're about 6 feet apart from each other.
And what's the diameter and species of the trees?
I'm unsure. I'm very surprised.
R.S. Clapham did the cutting, but then S&M Farms was also in there, and they had a tough time working with the stone wall and around, so I'm not sure if they would have cut it, but I haven't seen that, and I don't know why we would want trees cut over in that back corner, because that's kind of out of the way.
Yeah, it wasn't there when I had done the original erosion control inspection. Either of those trees were still, there was no cutting, there was no wood chip pile when I did the original.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, the only tree cutting was done when the guys did the initial cutting and when they did the hazeling.
One of them looks like it's about a 12-inch.
Yeah, it's a French tree.
It's a good-sized tree. It's a
And then the
fairly
brush
large
mulch
umbrella that's
pile,
going to be missing next spring to shade that one.
which is, I believe it's the running stream that goes behind most of the properties on Willow Oaks.
Now, what's up with that big hole? Wasn't there a big hole
The
by
footing drain, yes. In my discussions with Mr. Cove, he was going to close it off and put a berm in there. It still hasn't happened, so it's still not fully frozen, it's still running into the wetland, it's extended the area. You can take a look at the pictures after. It's most definitely gotten larger. So, and I did see you guys put the erosion controls around it, but unfortunately there's no erosion control blocking it from going into
Did you
the
put stone
wetland
in front of
area.
it today?
Yeah, I put the wattles and the silt fence, and we put some stone around it just to help weigh it down and capture anything that may go over there, because that corner itself is very, very wet. The skid steer actually got stuck there yesterday. And that footing drain, the engineer came to look at that footing drain to make sure it's going in the right direction. It's actually short, actually needs to go out like another 11 feet over.
If it was going out another 11 feet over, it would completely surpass the wetlands where it's getting in, so that's probably why.
Yeah, but then that ground is high, so it's almost like we'd have to dig a sump right there.
But unfortunately, so the reason where you guys put the erosion controls aren't really doing much is because you guys disturbed the area where the footing drain is actually coming out. That's all silt, and that's not natural, and that's all getting pushed out when the water flows.
I mean, I'll
out.
go there tomorrow and I'll put some straw bales to block off that stone wall to separate it, so anything, hopefully that will go through it, we'll settle in
So I think
there.
that area is going to need to be looked at in the spring and be raked out.
Okay,
I'd suggest putting some stone right at the mouth of the footing drain pipe. Putting stone right in there, because that'll slow down the velocity of any water.
okay.
Any water that's tumbling out of there won't disturb the soil that's below it. Just a couple shovelfuls pile will take.
Yep.
Now, is the foundation at the same elevation as it was on the plan?
Yes, it is, yep. Yeah, and what we did was, we actually shot the footing drain first where we needed to daylight it, and then we ran it backwards because there was zero leniency on how that would work. You know, if you started at the house and ran its way over, there was no guarantee it's gonna work. That's how close it was. So, I mean, it's a tough site, you know, big, beautiful houses up there, but it's a tough site. You got the wetlands on either side of the driveway, and then you got low-lying land that just collects the water, and when it rains, that place just gets so muddy.
Yeah, there's a reason it was the last lot.
And there's no room,
Yeah.
and, you know, and
Yeah.
there's, you know, after the house is in, there's really no room to work
Right.
up there.
In addition to the site visit I did today, I did compile a list of conditions that were violated from the order as well. Conditions A5, A7, A14, A17, B1, B5, B7, D2, E2, H1, and I2. And I specifically listed out each one as well here. But in regards to the footing drain, there should be no sedimentation in wetlands or waterways from discharge pipes or surface runoff leaving the site. It was under the stormwater one, which is specific.
This picture here, is that
Yes.
resource area on the other side of those?
On the other side where the vegetation is, that's a resource area. my communications with the contractor, he has remediated some of these violations. And the order of commission has been provided to the people on site now. I made sure that Mr. Cove has it, as well as Ms. Antonelli has it, and Ms. DePinto has it.
Is there a monitoring condition in that order?
No, there's not. It was one of the older ones from before. Before we added the wetlands conditions.
Aside from the footing drain, is there any other deviation from the plan? And do we know if the design engineer has looked at that, where it's in place now, if that's gonna work?
I was told that he was. I did ask for an email from him confirming everything. I have not received that yet.
Who was that again?
The design engineer. I spoke to particularly Mr. Cove.
Yeah, I met Jay Finley down there, and he's in the process of doing as-built, but he did shoot that, footing drain, because I knew you guys were gonna wanna see it, but based on the flags and the plan, he says it's in the right direction, but it's actually 11 feet short. So it's heading out there. He didn't go any further. He had 11 more feet to go, but he felt like he's on the right route, but that'll be on the as-built plan.
I know we saw that before, but that's not in this set, right?
Yeah, I believe it's
I have a picture of the footing drain on my
Yeah, I
report.
think the
yeah, they're
footing-
looking for that, so I can grab a copy of it from the office.
So that big hole though is not staying, right?
That
was-
big hole should not. It's
No, the big
not
hole
supposed to
won't
be
stay
on
with
that.
it.
No, what was the intent of it? Because it was beyond, was it beyond the discharge point, right? It was beyond, it wasn't between the house and the,
The intent of that is that where the footing drain is, it needs to extend out another 11 feet, so he did that. And on the plan, it shows this, can I show you this?
Yeah. It shows this footing drain going out, I think that's
Right by the wall,
A13,
right?
and it shows it actually going through the wall.
yeah.
So he stopped it inside of the wall, trying to be proactive and not go too far ahead, but he dug that trench out that way, and it I know we're in the buffer zone out here, but the water has been so high that the water's actually receded back into our trench. So we actually have to take this, and he is about right where the G is, and we're supposed to bring that out about another 11 feet.
Okay.
So I know technically we're very close to that wetland buffer zone, but we're still within that based on this A13 flag. You know, because when Angela called, one of the neighbors said it was on the wetland, so
Yeah.
we got a little bit worried, but, I mean, that's the only place in elevation to drain that, there was no other option.
Yeah.
So it may look like it's disturbed, and it did break through. If we hadn't had such a rainy season, I believe that this water would have subsided, and this water been a lot lower. It wouldn't look like such an issue as it is.
So it just seems like we need to get that buttoned up as soon as possible come springtime.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
right
gonna
now
be
it's a
amazing.
puddle. I think, for us to put some stone around that pipe to slow the force of the
Yeah.
water down, I'll stake some straw bales through that channel where we dug through, that caused the pipe to go through that stone wall. And maybe I'm thinking that we can swirl it out on the inside of the stone wall to get that water going down instead of over. Because that site was so wet, we actually ran the perimeter drain all the way around the house, not just around all around the house and the garage. So I think there's 550 feet of perimeter drain pipe plus the drain.
Right.
Very wet, a lot of water down at that footing.
Mary Ann, is your plan to actively monitor the site now, or
Excuse me?
is your plan to actively monitor the
Yes.
site now?
Is it?
Absolutely.
Okay. That is my plan, and, Once I'm retained, yes. What I'd like to do is next time it rains, it said Saturday, but maybe Sunday morning I can get out there. Saturday, I'm kind of booked. But we'll see what the effects of the rain are. It'll be kind of obvious. I think what the pathways are. It'd be good for you to get out there on Saturday and take a good look at where water is flowing and where it's going through, what points in the hay bales it's going through.
Okay.
Here's the address of the folks that sell the flocculant in
Okay.
Oxford. I would recommend picking up a 5-gallon bucket of it.
Polymer flocculant?
Yes. Yeah, nothing with
Not gonna use Allen or
charged,
anything,
yeah.
okay.
Hydrograss actually will require you probably give them a sample of the soil,
Okay.
so they can match it. Type of flocculant. And right where the foundation drain comes out, and you create a little pit there, put the stone in there, you can put flocculant right in that with hay bales just beyond it. It'll stick to the hay bales, and there won't be any turbidity getting past it.
Any other thoughts? Any recommendations, Angel?
Due to the nature of the site and a lot of this work will have to take place in the spring in regards to removal if that is needed, I recommend issuing an enforcement order. Just so we can make sure that everyone stays on timeline and to keep everything together.
My question is the amount of material in the resource area. How significant is that?
It's different on different aspects of the site. Near the footing drain, there is a significant amount more. And towards wetland flag B38, there is quite a bit towards along the edges, and it does taper out as it gets farther out into the wetlands. I haven't gotten my muck boots on and gone out there and measured how deep it is. But I would say in some areas there is a fine sediment, but in other areas there's probably, looks like there's more.
What about the driveway entrance? Any material being tracked out onto the roadway?
Not anymore, since they have done the larger stone. Before they had smaller crushed stone. I explained to them that, the large stone would work better with rock the dirt off. I inspected it today. I had the building commissioner was in the area. The building inspector was in the area and had checked it the day before and said, a week before, and said that it was a lot better. I haven't received any complaints as well. That was a concern that I had discussed before this was brought to the commission.
I'd recommend a chance to go out with you and see those areas
Yes.
where the sediment's deeper. I would recommend some kind of restoration for those areas.
Yes, just,
Yeah. With a shovel.
yeah, it may just be these small raking areas and stabilizing, but
Yeah.
it does need to be addressed.
So I see the draft enforcement order. I guess the only thing that I would probably want to see in addition to that is a monitoring requirement. Just so that we know somebody's going out there actively watching it for them.
Monitoring requirement. How often would you like to be monitored?
I would say right now, minimum of once a week after a rain event, until we know that it's actively being managed well.
You can add that in.
Kind of flex it to go with the weather too.
Yeah.
Time it after a storm. Or in a week. Or during the storm.
motion for anything?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we ratify the enforcement order with the addition of the monitoring requirement on a weekly basis.
Is there a second?
A second.
Those in favor? Thank you for coming in.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is 19 Willow Street. I know last meeting, Dan mentioned we might follow up on that. Do you have any news on that?
Yes, I did receive contact from Mr. Broder over the weekend. The homeowners did respond to him via text message. They would like to have a site walk Saturday at 8 a.m.
This Saturday?
Yes, does that work for everyone mostly?
That works for me.
And they just it was asked to be reiterated, no one's to step on site without them there.
Yeah, if we just get confirmation as we get closer, but that's the one, okay.
Absolutely.
138 Old Tavern Road.
Yes, so I did speak with the engineers yesterday on this project, as well as I was working with Denise Childs from DEP and contacting Mr. Karuki about the project. He was supposed to have the plan to me by tomorrow in the NOI. So I did take a site visit out there today to see what was done, because I haven't received any updates or contact. He did re-erect a lot of the silt fencing around the driveway. There are, in some areas there is hay piles, in other areas there is stone lining the silt fencing along either edge of the driveway. My recommendation is, as you can see by the pictures, there's a dumpster and a steep slope right above the resource area. My recommendation is to also put erosion control along that as well, because it looks like there is some debris and silt going down that hill. And to add wattles over crushed stone along the silt fencing. But at this time, that's the only contact I have.
Is the owner's the owner's consultant's working on doing the NOI, are they maintaining the site for them as well, or?
No, they are not.
So-
The contractor is someone who works for him. His name is Marcelo. I don't believe he works for a contracting company. I believe he just works for Karuki.
So his consultant engineer isn't giving him recommendations to control the site, in other words?
They are, from my understanding, they are recommending how he should proceed, but at this time, they're waiting on him.
Those are the same pictures as before.
These ones are from this morning.
Oh,
Since he did re-erect them, but they will need, I believe they will need straw wattles at the minimum to line them. Denise Childs did offer to assist in this matter if we had not had a resolve in the 2-week time frame. I was going to reach out to her as well as Karuki tomorrow and see where this is.
Anyone have any thoughts, comments?
What was supposed to, wait, they were expected to have it to you by tomorrow?
Yes, he said
So-
2 weeks from November 28th.
So, I mean,
This was have a full restoration plan. I do know that it's ready to go. They're just waiting.
I think we need to, at worst, in any case, I think we need to do something about the erosion controls.
Yeah, I was gonna give him I didn't have time to today, but I was gonna give him a call in the morning, let him know that he needs to beef them
And I'd be careful about directing them what to do out there. That really shouldn't be coming from us. So if you see something where they could improve it, for instance, straw wattles, or whatever else you may have talked about, it really should be coming from his consultant. And otherwise, if something fails out there, you're the first person they're gonna point the finger at. So I appreciate that you wanna get the site controlled and kind of help them along, but, you know, as we've been saying all along, the onus is on them. They need to get their consultant involved, tell us how they're gonna fix it and start doing it. And it doesn't sound like people are really actively engaged at this point.
So I do believe Denise will help.
So I have no issue with going back to the central office for assistance on this.
Have we had any contact from the owner in terms of an intent to file a new notice?
We've been given updates all along, they just haven't met the deadline, right?
Exactly, yeah, they've been giving updates. I haven't communicated with him in the past 2 weeks since this email that was sent from Denise, but I have communicated with Whitnam and Bingham, the engineers over there, and unfortunately it's just not ready to be submitted yet.
Okay. Yes, so I mean, my opinion, see how everybody else feels, but if tomorrow comes along and we don't have it, I'll list her.
Okay.
What else with this one? All right, next item is 723 Willard Street.
So I have received an update from Mr. Hannigan on behalf of Mr. Dandini. He did send along a couple pictures of the progress that they have made on the site. I also did receive approval to receive legal advice in regards to hiring a company to go out and take care of the encroachment ourselves. I haven't received a call back from them yet. I did receive an email yesterday that they have sent it to the appropriate attorney, and I should receive a call by the end of the week. My main concern is, can the city put a lien on someone's property for work not on their property? That was the one concern.
Put a lien on it?
Yeah, how, charge it at his expense.
He's trespassing, so you give him notice to get what he owns off of the city property. Now, what the exact requirement is that, or how much time is needed for that, I couldn't tell you. That's what we'd need the attorney for. But if they didn't comply with that order, then somebody could go in and remove it themselves. And that's something that's been done in other communities. It's quite often done with old dilapidated buildings, for instance. In that case, usually it's private property, but after X amount of days go by and you give them notice, you take care of the issue. But yes, other conservation commissions, it's usually a much minor encroachment than this. But when there are things and people ignore them, they'll go in and take care of it and charge them. You're usually talking small jobs compared to this, but
Yeah, I was more so thinking of where, how would it hire the company, and where that money would come from.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, in the past, it was the intent of the commission not to really go in and do that work. It's just to give them deadline,
Yeah.
which we really don't have at this point, if I'm not mistaken.
It doesn't look like, they were gonna have a footing in, and have a pad be ready to go so that it could be moved when the ground's frozen. And it looks like that's not even the case.
If this is all what's been done since the summer, then it doesn't take very long to do this. So I think the biggest thing to discuss with council is not so much what can we do to go remove it ourselves, because I don't think anybody really wants to do that, as
Yeah.
much as give them a deadline and what's the recourse if they don't comply. That's,
How to enforce the rules.
yeah, building, I mean, reading in this email, building permit plan for a shed, there's not a lot of work to do for that. And the time it takes to get a permit for a shed once you drop it off here, I don't think there's that much time for that either.
I believe it's a one-day term.
Right. That could have been done in the summer. You need to get permitted long in advance of doing your construction work.
It also says on the letter, the rest of the work will likely need to remain until spring. But this is the major portion of the work that's needed to be done. I don't really agree with that statement. Wasn't there a lot of other real property that's located on city land besides the shed?
Right, isn't there?
Oh, yeah.
My
The
memory
tennis
was
court.
that there was a fire pit, there was underground utilities, there was some type of a basketball court.
Court that's on it that has retaining walls around it.
So
Right.
for him to say this is the major portion of the work that needed to be done seems a little
No, I would agree with you there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So once I hear from the legal counsel, I will update Jim appropriately.
Anything else on that one? Okay, next is 96 Exchange Street.
So I did speak to Marcy from Dan's Paving and Excavating today. They'll have someone out there either Wednesday or Thursday to remove the debris in the wetland that were discussed, and then they'll give me a call after to go out there and inspect the area and make sure it's all been removed. So I believe that was the last thing before they could start work there.
Any comments on this one? Okay. Certificates of compliance, we have the one for 567 Pierce Street. I think we discussed at the last meeting that we're probably gonna need to continue monitoring that till we get to spring, is that correct?
Yes, I did go out there, I did meet with the lead contractor, and we went over the areas that need to be fixed, we went over what needs to be done, and he'll be going out there also to inspect it periodically as well as I will.
And then the next one we have is for 8 Eden Drive.
Yes. So I did forward the new as-built I did receive from Terry here. As well. And I did receive a new copy of the letter as well that stated the deviations. Print it out though. Do you have it in your email? I forgot, I don't know where that out.
When was that sent?
It was dropped off in my office last week on Tuesday. The footing drain, the drain was on the other property, so they did cut it. And they adjusted it on the asphalt.
That was really the only thing really.
That was the only concern, and
I appreciate you catching that. Honestly, I was shocked and that it was. And I wanted to get it corrected, so we've got it corrected.
Usually the surveyors don't lie.
Yeah, well, I was shocked. I was like, "Oh, I don't think so, you know, but, yeah, it was, surprisingly.
Any other comments on this one?
So we do have the letter though stating that.
We do, I didn't print it.
Yeah, I didn't
off.
get a
They
chance to
just-
look at my email
They
today.
did,
so-
list all the differences.
Okay.
We also had
So
to,
the drain was off of the property
been,
and it's been moved.
been cut
physically.
It's been
here,
cut.
yeah.
I believe it's 3
The updated as-built.
Okay, so that, the plan we looked at the last meeting was actually correct.
And the site was stable, right? When you
Yes,
were
the
out there?
site's completely
Okay.
stable.
Make a motion on this one tonight?
Make a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for DEP file number 199-1060, 89 Drive.
Second.
All in favor? All right, next item, extension permits.
None at this time.
Communications,
None at this time.
the Hill Street Conservation Management Area.
So I did go through, I did put up the sign that we had discussed, as well as recommended safety rules that I found on Mass Wildlife Industries.com, as well as the hunting dates. The only issue I did have with the kiosk is that it's fairly old and it's weathered, so it's very difficult to close and open. And it kept flying open on me, even after I thought I closed and locked it all the way. So that's the only issue I've noticed here. It's just very, even the cork board's extremely weathered. It doesn't look like it's weatherproof. If that makes sense. It's not very sound.
Has anyone been up to see it?
I haven't been up, no.
Like when I was opening, the whole thing was
Yeah.
shaking with me as I.
It's been moved a few times. I think it's been in a couple locations too, so.
That was the only problem with that site. Everything's up there. And then we're just waiting for springtime when the Park and Rec can purchase the new kiosk sign, have the new kiosk built. I believe they're either Dick O'Brien will be building it or CTEI will be building it. Unless we have, an Eagle Scout project.
There was a discussion at a previous meeting about there's some conservation land past Shoalin Farms. And they actually have two signs, so they actually have like a map. If you go past Shoalin Farms,
There's a kiosk in there.
yeah, there's like,
Okay.
one of them there's one location where there's like 2 kiosks, and one of them is a dedicated map. It's an area where people hunt all the time, because I see the trucks
Yeah.
there, and so I think, maybe that one sign that the city is looking for, maybe in addition to it, we could have a second one, replace that smaller one, where we could put in that map that from, from Mass Wildlife. And maybe we could, have a second kiosk built, to house that. If this one is kind of not really holding up.
I'm just more worried of it getting not vandalized, but if for some reason it opens up and papers are flying out of it, causing litter.
Yeah.
You know if that's happened or?
No, not this time, but it happened a couple times while I was there.
I mean, worst case, we could put a screw in it,
Not yet, that would be another fix, probably a little bit easier.
But I might know someone that needs an EEL project, so
Yeah,
if that's something the
definitely let me
commission is
know.
interested in, that's a possibility.
Anyone else on this? Anyone in the audience have any thoughts or concerns on Hill Street? All right, next Next is meeting minutes.
At this time, I do not have any.
Can I ask when the next meeting is?
Yes, it will be January 8th.
Thank you.
All right. New business policies for the commission's application.
Something I've been working on in the office is different policies and procedures that should probably be posted online, as well as be available at my office, the commission's office, for the public. So I get a lot of calls, people are like, how do I do this, how do I do that? So I worked with a couple other communities and I made a couple different documents. I did post them in the Google Classroom. For example, public hearing protocol, because I do find that we're having issues where people want to ask a question at a hearing, but they don't state their name or address, and then myself or the scribe has to spend a lot of time going back, searching on GIS, trying to find who they are, and sometimes we just have to put a woman in the audience said this, or but another thing would be, because I get a ton of plans that are rolled up in the office, and unfortunately those aren't very easy to store, and I'm finding that they're ending up on top of the file cabinets in the past, and they're all mixed up, and the tags fall off. So I put a policy that we ask for folded plans, no binded projects to limit the plastic use coming in and out of the office, as well as a digital copy for the online store, so we're hopefully not generating as many copies.
So we should spend some time going through this.
Yeah, if anyone has any other ideas or...
Well, I can tell you, having done them in the past, you almost immediately wish you had added more things to it or taken things from it, so it's going to be a dynamic
That's
work
why
in progress. But the first go around is always the most challenging, so I think everybody should look at it and put input to it.
I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah.
I think that the checklist for, filing is huge. I mean, I just remember in the past, we've had things come in and they give us half of the filing and, then they expect to be on the agenda, even though it's not all there. And then you just end up continuing it anyway. So if there's an expectation of what we're looking for up front, what a complete filing is, at least that way, we can.
And it's gonna also be helpful if there's ever an issue where I'm out of the office or there's someone new in the office, or so they can kind of go over, as well as I was going to leave a copy in the building department, a couple copies in the building department for them to give to them, so that they know the next steps and they have a wetland.
All right, next we have old business, New Knockbrook.
I don't have an update at this time. It's currently, I did make the appropriation request, but I haven't had any update on it.
Okay. Emergency certifications,
None at this time.
project update requests, 66 Granite Street.
So I did receive contact from Mr. Morrow, as well as I contacted him before the meeting about the updates that he had been giving. He passed along some information as to why they haven't been able to, meet the deadline. There's just been a couple, there's a medical emergency, unfortunately, for the woman who's writing the conservation plan. She's currently home recovering, and they're hoping that the conservation plan will be here by the end of the week. And they do apologize for the delay.
Anyone want to add anything to this one?
Not right now.
375 Harvard Street.
So I was contacted by GBC Construction. They were looking to start the sewer install portion of the work. I went down there with Mr. Colombo and we did a site inspection. We decided that they did need to put in new erosion controls. There were some Jersey barriers that had been knocked down. That ended up an area that it was concerned to Mr. Giannakis, and the DEP sign was not up at that time. So I did explain to him that he had to have those done before he could start work. They were done by the next day. The only thing that was not done completely was that he was not made aware by the owner that he needed to order snow storage signs. So they have ordered those snow storage signs, but they do take a couple weeks. They did reinforce the Jersey barriers along the wall. And they've made it a memo in the office that, if they fall down, they need to be immediately taken care of. And they did put all new erosion controls in as well. And then I also have an update from 272 Central Street Espresso Pizza, where there was a cutting of the police and were involved. I did go out there and take a look. They did remove all the debris. They did leave it on the banking towards the parking lot, very neat piles. There were some birds in it, so it looked like wildlife habitat, and it wasn't obstructing. It didn't look like it was at risk of falling into the resource area. So I'd say it's fairly complete. And then one more. I did receive an update from Frank Gorman in regards to Ava Way. They have completed all the necessary work to build out the road. They are working on applying for their certificate of compliance through DEP. And they just sent an email laying out everything that they have done. So DEP will be taking a site visit out there soon to inspect.
Which one is it, either way?
It's the one by Bel Air Heights where there was a retention pond that had silt in it, as well as the catch basins were not at the correct level.
Yeah.
Which has all been fixed. Another update from the Conservation Office. I have generated a list of every single DEP file number that the Leominster Conservation Commission has ever issued. I've been going through the list. I've been finding files that were either missing or that needed to be scanned in. And I was able to find, the different names they may be under, for example, Neighborhood Development Trust, Mazzaferro. So I've been able to expand our online database and reorganize, as well as I've been able to organize the list by orders that are going to expire within the next year, orders that have already received a certificate of compliance, orders that have expired completely, orders that have superseding conditions, as well as orders that are currently active. And this is just the currently active list, along with the ones that will be expiring within the year.
That's a quick effort.
It's still a work in progress. There's over 756 file numbers, I believe. But it's helped. I found a lot of files that were completely misfiled under wrong names, wrong addresses.
When you have more free time, I think digging deeper into the ones that are due to expire or have recently expired, try to keep in mind the ones that had important tasks in there to be completed.
Yes.
So not so much concerned about these small
have-
buffer zone jobs, but if somebody had to do a replication area and that wasn't done, we don't want that just
That's
going for years.
This is just the one I've been using to generate my site visits. I've been going to all the sites and seeing what's going on there. For the ones that are completely expired or were under enforcement and expired, I have presented the building department the list as well, and they're checking their building permits to line up and see if anything has been pulled or hasn't been pulled, as well as I've been going through the files, which are quite large, but it's a work in progress when I have free time on the weekends.
Evenings.
My lunchtime project. I eat my lunch. That is the end of project updates.
send on that item?
I saw Minusnak, whatever happened with the country club?
Oh, I apologize. I received an email, actually right before the meeting from Katrina from mosquito control. They're gonna be going out on January 14th to do the work. She did invite me to go to the site. The commission still wanted me to oversee the work. She says it'll be about a day's work. Sorry.
I just.
Yeah, we have to
Psychic
January
or something.
14th. Yeah, well, it was just like, you just said, I was like, oh, yeah, so that's what to say. Yeah, January 14th, that they'll be starting there, so, the commission still, the mosquito control is doing the work, the commission still wants me to oversee it along with them. I have no problem, I just need to know so I can schedule it into my day.
Yeah, set for that. All right, so I have a question under our next item, which is budget, which is regarding the desks that we talked about. But before I break into that, is there anything else on the budget that we have?
I believe I gave Larry a copy of the munis report in the wetland account. That I hand Callie, unfortunately, the comptroller's office has been really busy with all the short weeks of the holidays, so they weren't able to generate the munis report from the wetland account that they keep.
Okay.
I should have that before the next meeting.
Okay, but we have the munis report with all our line items, and then we have the spreadsheet, which shows our revolving fund from the filing fees. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Which gets me to my next question. I'm going to have more questions for you at some point, I think, on this. The city council on their last agenda, under finance C26, petition by the mayor relative to the appropriation of $1,500 to be made to the Conservation Commission expense account, some to be transferred from the wetlands fees reserved for appropriation account. Do we know what that sum is, or what was all that 1,500 from it? The way I read it, it looks like some of it was coming from that, some of it was coming from somewhere else. Do we have more concrete info on that?
Unfortunately, I don't. I know I put a appropriation request for the desk and printer ink for the mayor's office, but it shouldn't have come out of the wetland fund.
Okay.
I can provide a copy of that appropriation request as well.
Because
I can most definitely talk to the comptroller.
yeah, when I watched I watched the clip of the council meeting just to see, and it looked to me like it was coming out of the fee, the wetland fee
The
account.
WPA revolving account.
Right. So, but we're not clear on that, what the intent was.
No, I'll
Okay.
have to contact the comptrollers.
Because I have some concern about that. And I think we talked about this a few meetings ago,
Yeah,
in discussion of the furniture in particular. Because there is, very specific things we can and can't use that money for. But to back up one step too, just the way that we do business here is still a little bit confusing to me, because for anything that involves usage of the funds collected under the Wetlands Protection Act for filing fees, that doesn't require appropriation by state statute. So I guess I'm looking for clarification too, why that is going to the city council agenda, if that's the case. If there's a separate ordinance or just a procedure or something that we're following here for that. Because what happened when the Conservation Commission Act was amended late 90s, appropriation was no longer required. You, instead of going to city council as well as town meeting, you could simply go to your mayor or your select board since that time on. It just seems like it makes things complicated if we needed something like printer toner and we had to get on the city council agenda every time we need something like that.
yeah, that's
And then my my last concern with this, and getting back to the desks, I know we had some debate as to whether or not we'd want to spend money for something like that. I think you had some comments on that at the time, Larry, too. And may have mentioned that we purchased furniture in the past and then it ended up disappearing or going to another department. Well, there's very specific things that you can and can't use filing fee funds for purchasing items. One very useful document I found for, the past 15 years or so is a letter that was issued by the Mass Department of Revenue to Mass DEP. And from the looks of it, it was agents in the Western region looking for an opinion at the time. And I think I'm gonna read most of this letter because it gives a very good overview on what our funds can and can't be used for, and it speaks specifically to office furniture too. So, excuse me. So I'll start with paragraph 1. This is in reply to your letter requesting an opinion regarding the purposes for which monies may be spent from the Wetlands Protection Revolving Fund. Specifically, you asked that we review a list of various expenses and advise whether local conservation commissions may finance them with monies from that fund. We apologize for the delay in providing a written response. As you know, under the Wetlands Protection Act, persons filing notices of intent to conduct certain activities on protected wetlands must pay a filing fee to defray state and local administrative costs in connection with the act. Thus, a portion of the fee is paid to the city or town and the balance to the State Department of Environmental Protection. General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40. With respect to the fees retained locally, the statute specifically provides that they may be spent by conservation commissions without appropriation. So that goes back to my question, why would we be putting things on City Council agenda for this? For the purpose of defraying the costs of administering and enforcing the act with the approval of the selectmen, city or town manager, or mayor. Chapter 43, Section 218 of the Acts of 1997. So that must have been the special act of the legislator at the time, kind of amending the Conservation Commission Act. We think it is clear from the quoted language that these fees are paid by the applicants primarily to provide DEP and local conservation commissions with adequate resources to review projects, issue regulatory decisions, and complete other required activities under the Act. Thus, we believe the Conservation Commission may only use monies in the revolving fund for those expenses directly related to its administration or enforcement duties under the statute, not for commission activities generally. This would typically include expenditures for professional and clerical staff salaries, specialized supplies, materials or equipment, and consultants to the extent incurred in processing notices of intent, issuing regulatory decisions, or enforcing the Act, i.e. those expenses that are difficult to budget on an annual basis because they fluctuate with demand. Expenses that support regular commission operations and activities such as office furniture, ordinary supplies, telephone and internet service, annual subscriptions, publications or conferences, general travel expenses, computers, and other general purpose capital items ordinarily budgeted separately would not be permissible uses. So reading that, that's where I had concern about purchasing office furniture for that account. Applying these standards to the expenses you list, the funds may be used for any in-house training, travel to and attendance at external training programs, workshops, or conferences, equipment or materials related specifically and directly to Wetlands Protection Act administration and enforcement. Fund monies could not be used, however, for training in governmental functions that must be performed by public officials generally, such as open meeting and public records law responsibilities, nor memberships in organizations dealing with matters generally within the purview of conservation commissions. With respect to mileage and other expenses incurred in performing site inspections and associated with the review of notices of intent or enforcement activities, they may be charged to the fund, but only to the extent permissible under the travel policy set by that particular city or town. Again, the purpose of the fund is to provide resources to pay for administrative and enforcement expenses that could be paid from the Commission's annual appropriations. but are difficult to budget due to fluctuating demand. It does not, in our view, authorize the commission to pay expenses that would not otherwise be allowed. So that, I think, gives a pretty decent overview of what you can and can't do with it. Naturally, there are times you're gonna run into some gray areas like with anything, but I think in relation to what we've asked for recently, the opinion is pretty explicit on that one. So that's why I'm just concerned about where that money was coming from, if we could get clarification on that. And also just general procedure, because I'm a little confused about how, and not that it's a problem, but in the future, if something's urgent, it could be a problem if it's sitting on the city council agenda for
3 meetings.
exactly,
Yeah.
and you need something yesterday.
Yep.
So if there's a process in government that you can simplify and make quicker, you always want to try to do that.
One of the comment on that is we had, I think, they were gonna get 2 desks.
That's what was on.
Right, well, we don't have 2 conservation agents. So, I mean, the wetland, any money that the Conservation Commission pays shouldn't go for a desk for an employee that doesn't represent the Conservation Commission.
Well, from what I just read, I don't think it should be going to even a person that does represent the Conservation Commission.
No, right, but I mean, even if that was the case and we could use that money, it still shouldn't go to someone else other than, like, it shouldn't go to a second desk for someone else who happens to work in the same room. Like,
No, I understand.
or even if it came out of our like yearly budget, I mean, why would the Conservation Commission be buying a desk for a position that isn't, conservation support staff or whatever, the conservation department or whatever? Like, it doesn't make any sense to lump those 2 together.
And there wasn't, when I watched the tape, there wasn't much discussion on it. I think Councilor Feckley may have had a question for Councilor Bedanza on it, and the way I heard it was coming from the filing fee account, which is why I got a little bit concerned watching it. So
Understandably.
if we could just follow up, try to get all the facts, maybe start with the mayor's office on the procedure end and why we're doing things the way we're doing, and then with the comptroller for where's the money really coming from.
Absolutely. And then just to clarify, if you guys, for Larry, remember I originally came to you guys with the appropriation, it was just for 1 desk. Once I was going through the city monies, it was for 2 desks. And the reason that Mr. Rudensky is on our payroll is because he does a section of my job for me, so I do pay him out of the city money, my city budget. He does get paid as an employee from my office, but he does the energy efficiency, because if he wasn't there, like Marco had been doing when he first started, I would also be in control of the green communities and making sure that the city stayed at, I believe it's 25% energy reduction, as well as I'd be handling all the National Grid, Kearsarge, all the different solar bills and accounts on top of it, which in itself is it's a full-time job.
Yeah, I just
wanted to clarify, I didn't.
No, it's just we don't have, I mean, we're like, it sounds like we're part, it used to be conservation was its own like department. It sounds like now conservation is part of another department. So money that's earmarked for Conservation Commission can only be used for Conservation Commission. And money that's earmarked for green energy is only in the green energy budget. Those 2 budgets can't cross. That's, they can't use conservation money for the building department, and the building department can't give the conservation money out of their budget. Because we have a budget that's just for conservation, that we've always gone to the city council every year to appropriate. Like, you go to the mayor's office and you meet with him, and then you go to city council to, like, that's the conservation budget, and that's the way it reads there. There's money in there for books and for office supplies.
And I do pay Mr. Rudensky out of a special account that was given to me to pay him, just because it's
Right.
not coming out of the salary for me,
Right.
it's coming out of a different
Yeah.
account. But I do understand what you're saying, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. Because, I mean, we ask for money every year, and like, we've asked for like more money, for like, training and stuff or whatever, and it gets denied every year. So it's like, it's hard when we can't buy office supplies, to, you know, to then have to be paying for other additional, you know, resources that are outside the scope of the Conservation Commission. Like, we have a very tight budget as it is, and, you know, and now we're looking for money for toner, you know, but, you know, if we had to support an additional person and additional expenses, that should be, it should either be in a totally separate budget, or they should just add it to our budget. But every year, if we ask for more money, it's always been denied, historically. You know, add more money for office supplies, you know, and they say no. Well, you know, now they're giving us more things we have to do with less money.
That's everywhere.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah, but don't add more.
No, I understand what
More
you're
of a
saying.
burden to the department, you know.
The bigger concern I have is what's happening with what we're taking for
Yeah.
filing fees, just making sure we're in compliance there.
I'll look into that tomorrow.
All right, we all set with budget. Agents report.
Next time, but I do have everyone's MACC member cards.
Okay, well, that's not me. That's you.
Brad.
So down the line.
Oh, that's right.
I have a collection of these now.
As well as I have everyone's
thinking
paychecks
that you probably have
in my
Can we
office.
get into the movies with this?
No, but you can get really great deals on trainings.
Nice.
Yeah, we probably could have saved money, right, and just not got you one? How's that work?
Yeah, okay.
We probably have a couple of them.
May have saved money elsewhere.
No comment.
Doesn't get us in early to look at the Christmas trees at least.
See, I do keep mine, there's last year's right there, right in my wallet.
That is all.
Okay, chairman's report. I have nothing filling in. And our next meeting is Tuesday, January 8th, 2019.
Says 18,
No.
but
It's
Who does
19.
it?
It's 19. It was Sarah. I apologize.
that's strike two on that line, you know.
All right, does anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Those in favor? All right, declare adjourned.